Alright, A2A Cessna 172 tutorial video on takeoffs. We got a bit to cover on takeoffs. There are 4 types of takeoffs that I want to go over. And that is the soft field, short field, normal, and crosswind. Now, with each video, I'm going to be discussing the takeoff procedures for each. We'll start with normal, since it's the most boring of the 4. Alright, so we just finished our before takeoff checklist, and we've already discussed things like our departure briefing. That's more for instrument operations, but feel free to do something similar for a VFR operations where we're discussing, basically you just want to talk about the departure procedure you're using, departure minimums, route, all that fun stuff. Now, we're going to go over the normal takeoff checklist, and we want to do our takeoff checks while we're still in the run-up area. This lets us get familiarized with the procedure we'll be using for the day. Alright, for a normal takeoff, the flaps will be up, throttle will be full, mixture best power, which is full rich here. Elevator is at nose wheel trim of elevator. Lift nose wheel at 55 knots. Trim set for takeoff. Climb speed. Once we take off at 55 knots, we're going to be pitching for VY. Since throttle's full, the only thing we have to control airspeed is pitch. So when I say maintain a certain speed on takeoff and the throttle's full, I'm referring to use the pitch to maintain a speed. In this case, we want to maintain VY of 79 knots on the 172R. According to this checklist, it's 79. On the 172S, and I thought with the 172R as well, it's 74 knots. I'm going to go with the way I learned it, which is 74 knots. So we'll climb out at 74 knots until we hit 500 feet above field elevation. At 500 feet above field elevation, you can actually start a turn to get on course or to on the crosswind leg of the traffic pattern. Now here at a controlled airfield, a lot of times ATC might ask you to start that turn earlier for separation stuff, but we won't worry about that today. So at 500 feet above field elevation, which is pretty much just 500 feet MSL here, we'll be doing the turn south. We'll turn right, south on course. Okay, and we'll continue climbing at VY 74 knots until 700 feet above field elevation. At 700 feet, we call safety altitude. Safety altitude is, I think I went over it during the run-up checks, but safety altitude is the altitude at which, assuming you maintained VY throughout the climb and you turned at 500 feet, then 700 feet is an altitude at which you are still close enough to the airport, but high enough now that if your engine failed, you could make it back to the airfield maintaining VY. Or not VY, but best glide. That doesn't mean you'll land on the runway you took off from. That just means you could get back to the field. And when I say field, I mean not the runway. It means the field, literally. The grass on the field, the perimeter, the taxiways, the buildings. That's considered the field. So, if you gotta put it down on the grass on the airport area, that's better than the frickin' city park, or in this case, there's a swamp over there that we're going to be flying over. You definitely don't want to go down over there. Alright, so 700 feet. We'll continue climbing at VY until we hit 1,000 feet above field elevation, which is your typical traffic pattern altitude. Okay, now in today's case, we'll keep climbing past 1,000 feet, but if you were shooting approaches, or if you were shooting circuit landings, then you would maintain 1,000 feet just like you would any other traffic pattern. So today we'll keep climbing. We'll probably end the video there and switch to another airport to cover another type of takeoff. Flaps retract at safe altitude. We'll go over that more with the short field and soft field. Alrighty, so we're ready for takeoff. I'll go ahead and close the window. That one is closed. Alrighty. Now, you may be familiar with a saying called lights, camera, action. In aviation, what that means is lights, referring to the aircraft lights, So lights, landing and strobe lights on, which only come on once you are about to take off. So lights, camera is the fuel mixture. We may have it out for taxiing purposes since we taxi with it leaned out a bit. So lights, camera is fuel mixture set for best power. In this case, that's full rich at some airports with higher elevations. Any airport with an elevation higher than 3,000 feet MSL, then you're going to want to lean that out to the best power setting. But here it's full rich, so lights, camera, action. Look out the window, throttle, here we go. Alright, so we've been cleared for takeoff. I don't see anyone on the runway. And before we get on the runway, we'll just, I don't see anyone on final approach. Alrighty. So normal takeoffs are just that. They're normal, they're boring. Alrighty. Throttle set for full. Alright, we got a small crosswind from the right, but nothing too major. There's 55 knots. Rotate. And climb out at 74 knots. See, it gets airborne pretty quick. Alright, there's 75 knots. Use pitch to maintain it, or close to it. There's 500 feet. We can start our turn on course. There's 700 feet safety altitude. I'll pause it real quick right here. So, if our engine failed right now, do you guys think we could make it back to the airport? I think we could. If the engine failed right now, even with turning, if we maintain best glide, we should be able to make it back to the airport. That doesn't mean we'll make it on a runway, just make it back to the airport. Alright, so we'll continue climbing at 75 knots. Thousand feet. Okay, now we can pitch for a faster airspeed. Let's pitch for 80 knots. That's a good climb speed. Alright, so we just keep climbing, get established on our course for our flight, and continue climbing to cruise altitude or lower. So that's the normal takeoff. Alright, short field takeoffs. You want to get as much runway as possible, so get those wheels close to the edge and keep your turns tight. You don't want to use up unnecessary runway trying to get in a good position, even if it means a bad lineup. Right here's good. Decent lineup, but look how much runway we ate up to get that. Most useless thing in aviation is the runway behind you. Alright, we'll set the brakes for a second. So, we've already reviewed what we're going to do. This is the short field takeoff. So, to reiterate, we're going to take off and rotate at 55 knots, climb out at 60 knots, which is VX, until we hit 300 feet on the altitude indicator, which will be roughly about 100 feet above the 50-foot obstacle. Once we hit 300 feet, we can pitch down a little bit to get to VY airspeed, which is 74 knots in this aircraft. And we hit 400 feet on the altimeter. We want to be above 62 knots by that time. So, yeah, pretty easy to do. So, just to look, everything is set. Lights, which is these lights right here. Camera, mixture full rich. Action. Look out the window. Here we go. Holding the brakes. Hold the throttle up to full. This is the short field takeoff, so throttle full. Throttle is full. Check your gauges. Everything's in the green. We're good. Release the brakes. So here we go. We'll put in our crosswind correction. Left crosswind, 90 degrees. Keep her on the runway center line as good as you can. There's 50 knots. 55. Rotate. Maintain VX of 60. Up, too slow. Alright, we are clear of the 50-foot obstacle. Pitch for VY. 62, flaps up. 400 feet, flaps up, power set. There's 70 knots. There's VY. Climb out at VY till 1,000 feet. Now, we're 500 feet above field elevation now, so we can make our left or right turn on course or in the pattern. I'll just keep it going straight ahead for now. Climb out at VY. There's 700 feet above field elevation. This is the safety altitude. If the engine failed above this altitude, we can make it back to the airport. That's assuming you made your turn off. Flying straight out like we did, you probably couldn't. Alright, there's 1,000 feet above field elevation. Pitch for around about 80 knots. Start trimming for 80 knots. 80 knots is a good cruise climb speed. Alright, that was short field takeoff. Next video is going to be climb. So we'll just do that one next. The next takeoff will be soft. Alright, A2A Cessna 172 soft field takeoffs. Alright, as part of the takeoff video, we're going to be covering soft field takeoffs. We've done short, we've done normal. Now we're going to do soft, and then we'll do crosswind and takeoff emergencies. So, soft field takeoffs. They're like short field takeoffs. When you're practicing these, I recommend you do it at a nice long runway, but in the case of the simulator, we can come to an actual soft field and do it. So, just like with soft field taxis, you want to keep the weight off of the nose wheel. Again, avoid using brakes unless absolutely necessary, but this is takeoff, so we shouldn't need them. I'm also gonna kill the wind real quick. Hold on. Alright, I've killed the wind. Reset the altimeter. So we don't have to worry about that. Now, I'm going to make the yoke visible. I normally fly with it hidden so I can see my switches, but I'll make the pilot side yoke visible today so you can see what's going on. The way we do a soft field takeoff is we want to keep the full back pressure, and that's going to cause the plane to rotate and get in the air earlier than 55 knots. So it might get airborne as low as the white arc depending on how lightweight you are and the conditions of the day. In fact, you're going to see it get airborne pretty quickly. So we're going to get it airborne as slow a speed as possible. This is to get us off of the soft field. And then we will pitch down. We will pitch down and keep the aircraft just above the airfield, roughly about wingspan length above the airfield. This is considered in ground effect. While we're in ground effect, we can build up speed quickly. Now, if we were to do this, and if we were to do a soft field takeoff without pitching back down to stay in the ground effect, so as soon as the airplane's nose lifts off the air and the airplane gets off the air, just try to go straight climb, we would crash. Because the second we got out of ground effect, we wouldn't be flying fast enough for the wings to generate enough lift. We would die. We would crash and we would die. Okay, so again, airfield here is pretty much at sea level. It's actually closer to Folkeson's elevation. So 600 feet is the 500 feet mark. We don't have to worry about an obstacle here. And 600 feet is 500, which would mean 800 feet is our safety altitude, and 1,100 is the TPA. Alright, so I'll try to walk you through this as we do it. Again, just like short field, we want to hold the brakes to let the engine build up, because we want to get airborne as soon as possible. Alright, look at that. Look, it's already wanting to pitch up. Alright, release the brakes. Aircraft's going to pitch up and get airborne a lot sooner than it normally does. There it goes. Airborne, pitch down for ground effect. There's 55 knots. Pitch up. Maintain VX until 200 feet. 200 feet, pitch for VY. Now, you may be wondering, why did I maintain VX to 200 feet like it was a short field? Most of the time, if you're doing soft field, it's going to be short field too. Also, soft field will get you, if you maintain VX, you can get clear of the airport faster and at a safer altitude to do VY. Now, alternatively, you don't have to do VX. Once you get 55 knots, you can get out of the ground effect and go straight to VY if you want. Alright, we can raise the... I made a boo-boo. I messed up, guys. I forgot to lower my flaps. Okay, so everything I just said, remember to have the flaps set to 10 degrees too. I forgot that. I totally forgot to do that. Oh well, live and learn. We got airborne. Alright, so that was soft field takeoffs. And I forgot flaps. The reason you want to have flaps down is because it generates more lift and takes weight off of the wheels. So it puts more weight on the wings quickly. Alright, so next one will be, let's see, crosswind takeoffs. Enjoy. Alright, I've repositioned us back at Craig, and we're now on runway 14, but the winds have not changed. The reason for that is our last form of takeoff, and that is the crosswind takeoff. Now, you would combine crosswind takeoff techniques with whatever takeoff you're doing at a time. I'm going to do a normal takeoff for the sake of simplicity, but you would just combine these same techniques to the soft or short field takeoff. Now, I'm also going to make one other change. I'm going to have the yoke visible. I normally fly with the yoke hidden on the pilot side so I can see the switches, but I'm going to make it visible this time so you can see what I'm doing. Now, I've set us up for a crosswind takeoff. The winds are 8 knots, and we're going to have almost a 90-degree crosswind. Roughly an 80-degree crosswind today. And they're at a pretty decent speed. Now, as you fly, you'll start with your typical crosswind correction for taxi, which is this right here, with the wind. But, as we accelerate and get faster, if we had this right here at takeoff speed, it's likely that our wing would turn so much that we'd strike the wingtip on the ground. So as we speed up, we want to slowly bring that crosswind correction out until we get to takeoff speed, and it'll be roughly right about there. Alright, and we'll use rudder inputs to keep us straight on the runway. Alrighty, so here we go. Advancing the throttle to full, putting in my crosswind correction. Use the rudder to keep yourself centered. As you speed up, slowly bring that crosswind correction out. Don't be afraid if the plane is a little squirrely. It's gonna be. Okay, we'll rotate at 55 knots. Look at that. Nice. Beautiful. Now we're at perfect crab into the wind. And just do your typical crosswind while airborne stuff. The airplane almost turns by itself, crabs by itself, so you just got to establish the course you want to fly. Climb out at VY. There's 500 feet. Alright, pause it right here. This is how you check how well that crosswind is. You want to turn the sound off. You want to be flying roughly along the extended center line of the runway. Now we're a little to the left because I overdid the crosswind correction once we were airborne, but this is typically a good idea, good way you want to see it. If there was no crosswind, you'd want to see that runway out your back window. Alright, so that's crosswind takeoffs. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you enjoyed the Alrighty. We want to keep at least 100 feet behind this dude. Just like you're driving behind a putwood truck on the highway, you want to stay at least 100 feet back from him. This way the jet blast is not a problem for you.